Are you still stuck on Stereo Madness? Or can't you beat one of the hardest main levels there are, the infamous demon levels? Well, then this video is for you. In this video, I'll tell you exactly how to beat every single main level in Geometry Dash easily, from Stereo Madness to Fingerdash, with strategies and methods that will help you beat the level way faster. So if you want the level you're stuck on to be completed, keep watching, because I'm about to explain how to do this for every single level. I put timestamps in the description for every level I'll talk about in this video, so click on these based on which level you're stuck on. Enjoy! Stereo Madness is the first main level, and if you're stuck here, you probably just started the game, so I'll explain the very basics on what to do to beat Stereo Madness. In the first part we have two jumps, a single spike and a double spike, which are the first obstacles you will ever encounter. To pass the first spike, all you have to do is click once, but before randomly clicking and dying, try to keep one block of distance between your player and the obstacle. This will lower your chance of dying, since you have more room to make a mistake like this. With the double spike that comes after it, try to keep half a block of space between you and the two spikes before jumping. Congratulations, you have now passed the first 4% of the level. For every spike you come across in this level from now on, do this. Except for one spike that I'll talk about very soon. You have now arrived at the staircase you need to climb. You can do this by clicking, then waiting until you hit the block, and then clicking again. But a way easier method is to just hold. Your icon will automatically jump like this, and you don't even need to do anything. Keep practicing these things I told you, and you'll be alright for the most part. However, at 28% a hallway appears that leads you to this pink portal. This is the ship game mode, where when you hold you go up, and when you release you go down. When avoiding obstacles here, do not spam your phone or keys, but instead avoid obstacles by holding for a bit and releasing. If you do it like this, you can control your ship a lot more, and once you can control it perfectly, you can keep doing this holding and releasing method faster by doing this for a smaller amount of time. You should be able to beat Stereo Madness very quickly like this, but there's one other thing you have to worry about. There are triple spikes in this level. Time these when you are very close to the spike. These spikes are the hardest obstacles of the level, so this might take some practice. Last but not least, practice, practice, practice. You can practice a level by clicking on this button right here, the practice mode button. Now implement these methods and you just beat your first main level. On to the second level, Back on Track. Back on Track is our second main level, being around the same difficulty as Stereo Madness. The only new thing that this level has are these yellow objects called jump pads. When hitting these, you make a huge jump into the air without even needing to click. In this level, when you see one, never try to avoid them and just let them hit you into the air, except for one tricky spot in the level. The only time you should avoid these yellow things is when you are at 10%. Here there are 3 jump pads, and when you hit them, they will launch you into the spikes above you. To easily avoid them, keep holding after jumping over the spike before these yellow jump pads. Now follow the tips that I gave on the Stereo Madness part and hit all the yellow jump pads, and you just beat Back on Track. GG. On to Polargeist, the third GD level. This level only has one new thing in comparison with Back on Track and Stereo Madness. Jump orbs, these yellow circles. When your icon hits a part of a jump orb, you are basically able to double jump in the air, making you able to jump over a large amount of obstacles. In Polargeist, whenever you see a jump orb, click when your icon is near them, except for one part. The orb at 25% is the only yellow orb you shouldn't click at, since when you do, this happens. Just keep that in mind. One other tricky part that can be made easier is the ship section at 33%. Instead of flying in the middle of the level, trying your hardest to avoid obstacles and eventually dying, go to the roof of the level, and whenever a block comes in your way, release for around half a second and hold again. You can almost do this while sleeping, that's how easy it is. And you also get a coin. For the rest, not much can be done to make the level easier, besides practicing it in practice mode. Our fourth level is Dry Out. This has all the objects introduced in the previous levels and is a bit more fast-paced than the previous 3 levels. It doesn't introduce a lot of new things, except for upside down gameplay. This changes the gravity of your cube and kills you once you hit the top of the level. It is the hardest part in Dry Out, so let me explain how to make it a little easier. First, click 2 times to pass these 2 pillars, click once again, and here's where our trick begins. From now on, keep holding whenever you are going up, and once you descend, do not hold. That is literally literally all you need to do. Just watch out for the final part, where you actually need to keep holding. Remember this pattern and you beat the upside down part very quickly. When you've beaten the upside down part, you have some standard gameplay, and after a while you enter the ship. You can almost immediately drop down here and fly over this obstacle that comes after it, and you can fly under the rest. After the ship part, there aren't much more tricks you could do, besides just practicing the level a lot on parts that you find hard by placing a checkpoint with the Z button on the start of a part you hate, then turn off auto checkpoints and keep practicing. GG, you just beat Dry Out. Base after base. The difficulty phase doesn't look too happy anymore like the phases that were shown in the levels before this, meaning that it is pretty hard. How do you beat it though? Let's see. We start off with gameplay similar to that from Back on Track. You should be able to do this pretty consistently. Once you reach around 20%, after hitting a yellow orb you can see these platforms. Don't do anything in order to skip some gameplay and to also get a coin. A win-win situation. After this you can literally click as early as possible on every single jump, since there are no timings here, so if you struggle with some clicks, click as early as possible. But when we reach 1/3 of the level, the screen goes black. This doesn't mean anything good. The gameplay here is pretty similar to the first part, except that there are some mild timings now and then, so be sure to not hold your click for too long, otherwise you might double jump by accident and die to a timing. Hold at the part with these jump pads like seen in the level Back on Track and enter the ship portal. At the start of the ship mode, fly as much in the middle as possible, since all the passageways are here, and if you struggle with the ship part that comes after it, try to fly as much as you can against roofs and floors as possible to use less clicks. The gameplay that comes after the ship isn't very special, except for the fact that some of it is upside down, making your jumps a lot harder. I suggest practicing this part a lot of times. When you're good enough to pause it a lot of times, good job, you just beat base after base. So, can let go is where you're stuck at? Well, let me help you, since there are some tricks to make this level a bit easier. At the start of the level, we got some basic gameplay, without any really hard timings. Some timings you need to look out for are at 16% until 17%, but we can make them easier to pass. When on this platform, instead of clicking very early to enter the next structure and do the timing, we instead jump late and hold. Like this, we can skip the timing and avoid a possible death. Do this for the third and fourth structure too. Afterwards, we got a part with 3 orbs, and remember to only click the second one here. If you click the first one, you'll die to these spikes. After this, the gameplay is pretty straightforward and not too hard until we reach the ship part. In the beginning, stay as much in the middle as you can, since here are the least objects you need to avoid. If you keep staying in the middle, no drastic movements need to be done, like when you stay at the bottom of the level for example. But let's fast forward a little more until we reach by far the hardest point in the whole level, 70%. Let me lead you through it click by click. First of all, we pause the spike by timing your jump a little later than you're used to. If we click too early, we won't reach the next platform, so don't time it early. After this, the gameplay is pretty straightforward, and just remember to keep holding when jumping into this blue portal that switches your gravity. The final annoying part is at 94%. Do not immediately jump after reaching this percentage, or you'll die to these blocks. Wait a little bit and then click. Now continue playing for 5 seconds and GG, you beat the level. Next up is Jumper. The gameplay starts off peaceful with little to no timings, but it gets harder from 12%, since now everything is upside down. To beat it a little more easily, remember the following pattern. Once you enter the reverse gravity portal, immediately start holding until you're dropping down in the air again. From here on out, you are only going to click on the lowest pillars. Focus on these. The only place you're gonna click twice is when you see 2 big pillars appear instead of just 1. Click twice here. Now that we got that out of the way, we got some more straightforward gameplay until we reach the ship part. There isn't much to it, except for the fact that you're now going to fly upside down. When entering an upside down ship portal, remember the following. In a normal ship, you drop down almost as quickly as you go up, which now changes to you dropping down way faster. This makes you need to hold longer when flying upside down, so try to release for a shorter amount of time and hold for a longer amount of time. Be sure to practice this part a lot and stay in the middle. Once you finally pass this, the gameplay is pretty straightforward after the ship part, except for a jump at 56%. Immediately when jumping into the blue portal, hold. If you do not do this, you'll die to these spikes. In the ship portal a couple seconds later, be sure to fly in the middle and you should be fine. And only one more tough part is left. At 87%, an upside down portal appears again. At the start, only click when hitting the lower pillars with your icon. Then at this ginormous structure, hold for 3 blocks and do the same thing again. Now past the final part, which shouldn't be too tricky, and good job. You just beat Jumper. It's getting tricky now, since we reached Time Machine, a level with a lot of triple spikes. Now, since the level has a lot of triple spikes, try to practice these by placing a checkpoint 1 second before triple spike, and trying to jump over these 3 spikes as often as you can, which will improve your skill very quickly. If you already are able to beat triple spikes a lot of times, let's continue. The gameplay is straightforward until 29%, where we see this portal, a mirror portal, making you have to play in reverse, which is pretty tricky, and this will continue until 57%. For this part, there isn't really any trick to it. You just have to keep practicing and practicing it by turning auto checkpoints off and placing a checkpoint with the Z key / button at the start of the mirror portal. After turning back to normal again, you almost immediately turn upside down. Keep holding when turning upside down and only release once to not hit this block. From here on, it gets straightforward until you reach 86%, the worst part of the level. You have to play upside down in reverse here, which is hard to do, but there is a very easy way to make this way easier. Turn your device upside down and the gameplay will be completely normal again, making it super easy. Just press the pause button right when entering the ship portal, turn your device back and continue beating the level from here. GG, you just beat Time Machine. Cycles. If you're stuck here, I understand you, but let me help you out. At first, do some regular jumps and when you hit this yellow portal, keep holding until you hit this blue portal and continue doing some standard jumps. At 11%, we have another triple spike, which is a little harder than Stereo Madness, it's triple spikes, and you'll die to it more easily. To make it a little easier, click as late as you can near the double spikes and keep holding until you enter this structure. It's a lot more consistent. Now, when entering this yellow portal, keep holding until the blue portal and continue passing some hard jumps that might take a while to get used to. Be aware that you shouldn't click any of the orbs and jump pads from 21% until 30%. From here you can start hitting them again. You can now see we have a game mode we haven't seen before, the bull game mode. In this game mode you move up or down at a slow speed, so you should time your clicks a little earlier than you're used to, since your icon won't move up immediately. So practice this part without auto checkpoints on a lot before trying to beat the level. Now we get to the ship part, which looks really hard at first sight, but there is a trick you can use. When entering the yellow reverse portal, do one click which you hold for half a second, so you enter the blue portal. Do the same thing with the blue portal here by doing one click when entering the portal which you hold for half a second until you reach another yellow reverse portal, and continue doing this. It'll make the level a lot easier, trust me. When you get to this part with blocks and spikes, try to rest on the bottom and top parts of the level and release when needed. Don't do unneeded clicks, it'll just make everything a lot harder. After this, try to fly as straight as possible and beat the final part of the level. Good job, you've now beaten Cycles. We are almost halfway with the 10th main level, XStep. The main tip for this level is to remember all the fake jumps you come across, since there are a lot of them, and I'll go through all of them very carefully. After doing the first jump in XStep, you can keep holding after hitting this yellow jump pad, until you finish the 2 spike jumps after the blue portal. From here, we got some bull gameplay with a couple of fakes you have to remember carefully, and we are already at the ship game mode. This is pretty hard for a beginner player, so if you want to, you can learn this pattern to make it easier. Wait a little after hitting the ship portal and hold until you're around here. Then do another click to keep your ship from crashing into these spikes and wait until you're a bit close to the ground. From here, hold just enough to move between these obstacles and just after passing the final object, click again. If needed, click once when you're between these spikes. I'll do the same thing with the obstacles right here and fly fly as straight as you can between these spikes. The gameplay should eventually look like this. The cube gameplay continues. Be sure to not click on the highest pillar that appears shortly after you enter the game mode. The only tricky part in here is to not click this yellow orb just above the yellow portal that appears 2 seconds after you enter the cube portal. After this, the gameplay is very straightforward. In this ship game mode, take one route, the top one or the bottom one, and don't alternate between these, since it makes the ship a lot harder to control. From here on out, follow the stars until you are a cube again. The gameplay starts to get a bit harder here. Try to avoid the following jump pads or orbs. Yellow jump pad at 56%, yellow orb at 60% above the yellow portal, and the blue pad that appears right when you hit this yellow portal at 66%. Now continue the gameplay, which shouldn't be too hard, and boom, you have beaten the 10th level XStep. Clutterfunk is a tricky one, since most of the gameplay is just skill based and can't be cheated. Beware that your icon can sometimes be tiny in this level, meaning your jumps are also going to be way smaller. This also means you have to click later than usual because you won't jump as far. Okay, so Clutterfunk is mostly very straightforward, but there are a couple of tricks you can use to make this level a little bit easier, besides practicing it. Starting from 17%, you can see these souls. You can try to jump over them separately, but you might as well hold to pass all 3 of them at once, just like this can be done at 21% with upside down souls. In this ship part with a lot of spiky obstacles, fly between them and not over or below them. This is the easiest route to take. The part after this might be a little bit difficult for you. You could spam a lot to hit these orbs here, but there is a better solution. When you see an incoming orb, don't spam or click right when you are in the orb, but click and hold just before hitting it. The game will remember your click when you hold, making the clicks a lot easier since you don't need to time them. The clicks will basically look like this now. In the following ship parts, try to clip the roof and bottom of structures as much as possible and do not try to avoid them. If you try to not hit anything, you might accidentally hit the roof or bottom of the level, which will throw you off and lead to your death. When now entering the ship part with portals, just keep holding until the 4th and last portal. From here on out, just keep practicing since the gameplay is very straightforward. Just do not hit the blue orb at the final part of the level at 91% and you are good. GG. We are almost halfway through with the level Theory of Everything. At 0 to 8%, most new players spam, which works around half of the time. I recommend doing hold clicks though. These are clicks where you hold for a bit until you hit the orb. Like this, you can make sure you hit the orb without missing it or clicking too late to easily pass the first part. We now enter the ship portal where most people struggle with. To pass the first obstacle gap, hold when your ship reaches this spot, release for a short period of time and hold again. Now take the bottom route since here you do not have to click. When you reach the pink portal, just slide down without clicking, do a small click and boom, you just passed the first ship part. The next tricky part starts at 27%, where a new game mode is introduced. It's basically the same as Flappy Bird, but a little easier. Try to first click 3 times to land on this box here, after which you click 4 times with your UFO. Now just wait and click twice to enter the cube portal again. We got some more boring and easy gameplay and bam, we get to a kind of tricky part again. What you need to do here is click once to hit this pink orb, after which you hit this yellow orb to jump on a new platform where you do exactly the same. Or you can just keep spamming, which to be honest works 99% of the time. Just don't hit the yellow orb at the 3rd and final pillar. For the ball part that now comes, you do exactly the same. Spam. Do this until you switch back from the reverse game mode. Now follow the route shown in dots you can see when reaching the ship portal, and for the rest of the level follow the tips that I gave you so far. And with a bit of practice, GG. You just beat your hardest level thus far. Now let's continue to the next one, which is Electroman Adventures. We start off with some easy jumps that require no timings, and a yellow orb you shouldn't hit that comes after 2 pink orbs. The gameplay continues to be pretty straightforward, and don't worry, you can jump on these weird blocks too. It starts to get a little challenging in the ship game mode. Just follow the trail here, and if this is too hard for you, hold when your ship icon hits the cloud, release, and do the same thing with the next cloud. Now fly as straight as you can through the middle, move over the structure, preferably in 1 or 2 clicks, clicks and you now enter a small corridor. Stay on the ground here, and whenever a soul appears, hold for a short amount of time. Do the same for the next structures by staying on the ground of these as much as possible and only click when needed. It luckily becomes a lot easier after this. Hold when hitting the first pad after entering the cube portal until you hit this yellow orb, and hold again until you hit the second yellow orb. Keep holding to pass these two spikes without any effort. Now a ball game mode and a cube game mode, which both are doable with a bit of practice. The UFO part gets a little harder, but the trick to beat this easily is to click really slow here. Most of the rest of the gameplay is best to just practice, and not a lot of tricks are involved here. At the miniship, try to clip against as many walls as possible, and the parts afterwards should be practiced a bit more than the rest of the level, since the gameplay becomes a bit quicker here. Once you get consistent at this part too, good job. You have now beaten Electroman Adventures. A challenger appears, however. You are at Clubstep now, I see. Well, I'll help you beat this beast of a level. Once you jump over the first spikes, the hard part starts. Click twice really quick to make the first jump, and immediately click 4 times in a pattern where all the clicks are done at the same speed. For the 5th click twice as slow to hit the pink orb. Now jump over these spikes and on top of this blue pad, but before clicking again, wait for your icon to hit the ground, then wait a bit longer and click again. Then hit these orbs from this picture, after which you can start holding. Normally you should take this route, but there is an easier option. Instead we take the coin route, where we also get a coin now. Just keep holding here and immediately hit the yellow orb to pause it. Now start memorizing the rest of the level until the ship part. The easiest way to beat the first ship is to first land on this monster structure. Be sure to touch the bottom of his mouth. Now you can just let go, and when you hit the yellow portal, do a small click and hit the bottom of his mouth, and hit the bottom of the mouth of the next monster, after which you release to hit this blue portal. In the blue portal, hold until you reach this passageway, after which you try to fly as straight as possible in the final part. You can try different strategies that work better for you, but I would recommend trying to learn this pattern. It should eventually look like this. The next part until the UFO is just memory. Try practicing this more often than the rest. Once you can reach the UFO, try to not click very fast in a row. Have a consistent speed while clicking, and you should be able to pass it way more often. After beating this, you enter the first miniship, where you can only click once. First, fall from the bottom of the level and start holding, eventually releasing at this height in the level. Now we got some more memory which you have to learn by practicing, and we reach the second miniship. Hold and release once to reach the yellow portal, and hold and release there to pass that corridor. Click once for a short amount of time to not die to the spikes over here. When you are in the UFO again, spam until you hit the roof of this wall and avoid these spikes, which shouldn't be too hard. The next ship part is a lot easier than the rest, luckily. Stay as much on the roof and bottom of the monsters as you possibly can, and for the final 2 monsters, drop down, click to go over the spikes, drop down again, and click again. Here we reached one of the toughest parts of the entire level. Do the hold and release method you did in the previous parts again, but a little faster, and practice this part a lot since it's hard. But only one more very hard part is now left, which is this part. When entering the portal, you are upside down, remember that. Try to enter this first blue portal by first clicking a lot of times to fly straight into the portal, and hold once you are around this spot in the level again. Once you hit it, immediately release, wait until you are a bit below the portal, hold again, and immediately release, after which you try to avoid the final obstacles as well as you can. Now the level is basically finished. Just don't let the nerves get to you like I did. Good job, you finally beat Clubstep. Electrodynamix is a pretty hard level, not gonna lie, and even I sometimes struggle with it. There are some tricks to make it easier, however. Let me show you. The first 9% is pretty straightforward. At 8% you do need to check out these spikes though, since they become invisible. Be sure to look at them before they disappear so you know where to jump. Until 25% we have more straightforward gameplay, but at 25% a challenge appears. There is a lot of hardship gameplay in the following 8%, but you can make it easier by doing the following. As you can see, there are stars and musical notes here, and if you click and hold every single time on the second lowest star, you can wiggle your way to the UFO portal. Here's me doing it in real time, and while it takes some practice, it makes the level a lot easier. Now we enter the UFO portal. Click 2 times near the yellow reverse portal, once to to hop in it and once to hop out of it to avoid these spikes, then click once more before the blue portal and click another time here. So far it should look like this. Now we get to a part that most people find very tricky. Some people spam in this yellow portal part to avoid these spikes, but you might die if you do it for too long. That's why the best method is to do 2 slow clicks before hitting the blue portal, so you'll never hit the spikes above you. From here on out we only have the mini UFO portal left, before the gameplay becomes much easier. For this one you just have to click very controlled. Don't click somewhere very quickly twice in a row. If you keep your click slow and controlled, you won't hit any obstacles. The gameplay becomes a lot easier now until 60%, where the hardest part of the level starts. However, with this method I'm using, you only need to click 4 times. First, fall from this platform, hold for a small amount of time, then above this star, hold again until you go over the spike hill. Do the same for the next click with this star right here, until you hit the yellow reverse portal. Right after you hit this reverse portal, hold and release right before you hit it. Obviously, if you notice you're going too low, add another click, but try to follow this method, since it will help out a ton. We now enter a ball mode that isn't too bad, and when we reach 71%, the hardest part of the level starts. What I find works the best here is right when you enter the portal, do a tiny click, hold until you reach the top here, do another tiny click and release, do 2 clicks here at the bottom. The last one is the click where you need to keep holding to do the final part. After this hold click, click once more if necessary in the top part of the level and drop down. The rest is just practice, after which you eventually beat the level. Nice. On to the next one. The next level is Hexagon Force. The level starts with some straightforward gameplay that can be seen in the earlier levels. If you need help with this, watch some of the tips I gave on the levels before this. Hexagon Force starts to actually get a little challenging from 27%. Here you have to jump very late to not hit these spikes before the yellow reverse portal. After that, you hit the blue portal to change gravity again, and we get to 2 diagonal structures. For the first one you don't need to do anything, but for the second one, click as late as you can to overcome this soul. If you don't, you die. Now we enter something new, a dual portal, which makes 2 icons appear on the screen at once. You have to focus a lot in this part, which can be hard at first. But to make it a little easier for you, there is a strategy. First of all, do not focus on the top half of the screen where the upside down icon is, only focus on the bottom one. Now when you jump over the first spike, keep holding until you are on this platform. Now release for a bit, and after you fall from this platform, spam as fast as you possibly can, and stop spamming when hitting this diagonal block. Keep focusing on the bottom icon since the gameplay is symmetrical. Look at the middle of the screen and click whenever an arrow is aligned with your icon. Make all these clicks very light, cause if you hold for too long, this might happen. Now we get to another dual part, this time with the ship. The ship is going to move down a lot quicker when playing with 2 icons, so be sure to hold a little longer to fly straight. For the next part, start holding from here and keep holding until your players are sort of aligned with each other again, right here. Now focus on whatever ship you like to finish the part with. I'd recommend the top one since it has normal gravity you fly with most of the time. After this, the level becomes very easy. Click every orb here that doesn't have a large X on it and you're good. It sadly starts getting tricky again from 61%, where you now have to do gameplay with a ball, a tiny version of it, and these all being in a dual game mode. Most GD players find this very hard, but they don't know what they're doing. All you need to do is first click once to get on the next platform, and then click twice really quickly on the 2 platforms you see here. Do this very late when getting near the souls in the structures, otherwise you'll die to the soul on the platforms. From here on out it's very straightforward. The only things to really watch out for is to avoid any diagonal obstacles in this ship part that comes almost right after the dual tiny ball section. If you hit these, you get launched into orbit, which often results in death. Also, once you are in the final tiny ship section, try to speed up your clicks a bit, since this tiny ship makes your gravity a lot heavier, so you fall down very quickly. Once you do all this, you beat Hexagon Force. If you are stuck at the level Blast Processing, you are a little weird to be honest, since it's by far the easiest one out of the levels it's surrounded by. So if you're stuck here, try beating the previous levels first. After doing those, you'll easily beat this. Still, there's one game mode that might be tricky to do at first, so let's quickly go through that. All the gameplay at the start of the level is pretty straightforward with no tricks involved, but a new game mode called the Wave starts at 15%. You go up diagonally if you hold, and you go down once you release. It's as simple as that. Just try to stay as much in the middle as you can, and if you have a part like this where the gameplay is horizontal instead of diagonal, you can spam a bit if you have trouble getting through this part. There also is one dual game mode with the wave, but like you shoot with the other game modes, only focus on one icon at a time. Your choice which one. If you follow these steps, I'm sure you'll beat it in no time. Trust me. Good luck. We now are going to talk about how to beat the second hardest main level in the game, Theory of Everything 2. Before starting to try beating this, however, you should have beaten at least these 3 levels, otherwise the level is probably way too hard for you. If you did, let me explain how to beat Theory of Everything 2. Once you start the level, you have some basic memory gameplay. Don't hit the orbs with a giant X on it and you should be good. On to the next part. For the tiny ship at the 11%, there are a lot of hidden blocks you could randomly die at. These, however, are visible for a short period of time when they just enter the screen. Play this part a few times to remember the route you need to take to not die to these. An easy way to beat this part is by flying between these 2 spikes with your ship, and from now on you only need to hold and release once for every portal you come across in the ship part. Start holding in between the first and second portal you see on the screen and release right before the portal. Like this you can easily beat it. Now onto the UFO part coming right after it. Click once to jump over the soul. When entering the yellow portal, wait a little and then click 3 times until you hit the blue portal here. From here, click once to hop over this obstacle, then click twice to hit the yellow portal, twice again after being in reverse gravity to enter the normal portal again, and clicking 2 times once again to enter the ball part. This is mostly memory, which you can only get good at by practicing it a lot of times. We get to another UFO part now, but this one is a lot more straightforward. From now on, after hitting a portal, you click the first time twice, the second time 3 times, the third time 3 times, and the fourth time 2 times. Do all these clicks at the same moderate speed until it consistently works for you. We got some more memory and another ship part at 34%. First, fly right into the yellow portal and from here start holding. Keep holding when you enter the blue portal and release when you are past the bottom 1/3 of the screen. After that, do another click to fly into the yellow portal and pass the portals that come after this without any effort. A huge choke point is 40% though. You need to pass this tight corridor with a lot of obstacles near it. And to pass it more easily, keep holding starting from the blue portal and release when your icon is in the middle of the screen here. You should end up between the blue waves and black spikes, which can both kill you. And from here you can pass the part by flying as straight as you possibly can. After doing this, just hold, release when near the souls, and you just beat the ship part. GG. It's going to get a lot harder though. We now got some more memory you have to practice in practice mode, some straightforward wave gameplay, and the memory ball parts. This is the exact route to take. For the ship part that comes now, there isn't really any easy way to do it. Just try it a couple times to see if there's a click pattern that works for you. Our memory. And now the hardest part of a level in the entire game, the final ship part. Even pros struggle with this part sometimes, so how are you even going to do this? Well, let me teach you. The easiest way to do this is by clicking as few times as possible. First try reaching the yellow portal in just 2 clicks, which makes the part that comes after it a lot easier. And when entering this yellow portal, you can just do 1 click where you hold for a short period of time and release quickly afterwards. Once you do this, you can easily beat the final click too, by holding for a long amount of time just before this arrow sign. I will release at the right time and you beat the hardest part of all the main levels. Only 1 more hard part is left. After doing even more memory, you enter the UFO portal. Before that though, immediately hit this yellow orb to make the following pattern work. Click 3 times a bit faster than usual to pass the first row of spikes and release until around this point in the level. Now click 2 times until you hit the yellow portal, and once you hit the yellow portal, immediately click once again, after which you release for a bit. Click 3 times again, release, and click 3 times again. With this strategy, you enter the mini-wave portal very low, so click a couple times very quickly when entering the portal to not die to an obstacle right below you. From here on, everything is a lot easier and you should be able to beat it. Try to remember the patterns I told you, and you should be able to beat this level with 1 finger in your nose. You can do it. So Geometrical Dominator is the one you're stuck on, huh? Alright, let me explain to you how to defeat it. We start off with a cube part with 2 invisible pillars that are indicated with these arrows. After this we can see a new beautiful game mode, the robot. This mode is similar to the cube game mode, except for the fact that you can choose if you do a small jump by holding your click for a short period of time, or a big jump by holding a click for a long time. This might be difficult to understand immediately, so practice this part a little before trying to beat this level. In this ship part, try to hit the ground of the platforms you come come across as much as you possibly can. The clicks will be made easier for you like this than when you try to avoid everything. We got some more wave gameplay, and we get to a cube section which mostly is memory. Jump only on the second and fourth pillars, or you'll die. After this memory part, we got a speedy robot, which is a little harder, and if you struggle with this, try to hold a little bit longer than you're used to in this section of the level, because the level won't try to kill you as often when you hold for a long period of time compared to holding for a shorter amount of time. On to the ship part, where we first move up over this pyramid structure and then hold once we're near this huge structure around this spot. Keep holding from here and release when you're on the same level of the monsters. Now just slide over this ramp and don't do anything until you reach the ground again. Hold once again here to move into the UFO portal, which isn't very tricky to do since there are barely any obstacles. Now though, we get to an invisible memory section, which is the hardest part of the level. To learn how to do this, I recommend searching Geometrical Dominator copyable on the search bar of the game and remove all alpha triggers that make the gameplay invisible in this part. Now enter the level, go to this part and practice it as much as you can until you remember it fully. We now got another normal wave part and afterwards a mini UFO. Here, hit all these green buttons to open the gates and do this for the ball part too. We now can easily finish the level. You just beat the 19th main level, Geometrical Dominator. Let's continue to the next level. Deadlocked, the hardest main level in the game. But I can make you struggle less on it, so if you want to see how to more easily beat this level, keep watching. We start off with a relatively easy part. There are no timings on the orbs here, so you can hold a little bit before hitting the orbs to make sure you hit them 100% of the time. As easy as the first 11% is though, one of the hardest parts of the level appears at 12%. It will still be hard, but a pattern you can use to make it easier is to not do anything when entering the wave portal, and near the edge of the wave structure, hold until you are in the middle of the screen, after which you click 3 times. Hold on the third click, release into the yellow portal, keep not doing anything in the yellow portal and only start holding once you're almost near this edge. Finally, once you're in the middle of this section with the tiny triangle hills, click 3 times again, where you hold on the third click and then pass the wave. This will take some practice, but after a while it will become easier. The memory tiny ship part after this looks harder than it is. First, do a small click where you hold for a tiny bit to move over this moving spiky monster, and hold again once you're nearing the ground until you almost reach the top of the level. Do another tiny click here and release, after which you do the same on the bottom part of the level this time. Instead of doing a tiny click at the end though, keep holding to fly into the ball part. This ball part contains a lot of easy memory, since all you need to do is avoid the glowing red colored obstacles. And now we've already entered the mini UFO portal. First, drop down a little and do 4 clicks at around the same speed. 2 before you hit the upside down yellow portal and 2 after it. Now wait a little and at the right time do 3 UFO clicks that are a bit faster than usual. Then release and do 3 clicks again at the same speed. There aren't any tricks or patterns involved from 25% to 56%, so if you struggle here, keep practicing other levels with similar game modes or user-made levels with these game modes in them. On the ship part that says, I like this part. There are a couple of tricks you can use to make you die less often to this part. First, fly straight as you can in this row of portals. Once you almost hit the 4th portal, hold for a little bit to avoid an invisible obstacle that sometimes can make you launch into the air when hitting it. Now fly to the other row of portals and right after hitting the 4th portal, do a small click, drop down and hold again, until right before the 3rd row of portals. Don't do anything for a bit when you hit these portals until you almost hit the ground. Then hold and release again to enter the final row of portals. This will immediately launch you into another UFO portal, so immediately click when leaving this row of portals again to do a UFO jump. Don't do any quick clicks in the UFO game modes. Like this, you can dodge all these souls fairly easily. Now we get to possibly the hardest part of the level, the second wave part. Try to spam in the straight parts until you hit the mini wave portal. Once you actually hit the mini portal, you can carefully hold and release based on how the part is shaped. Don't spam, this will ruin your chance of survival. Except at the final corner, spam as fast as you can there to keep flying straight after hitting the ship portal. If you don't, you might drop down or go up too fast after entering the ship game mode, and you don't want that. From here, memorize the ship part by yourself. Here's a screenshot of which routes to take to make it a little easier for you. You now enter a ball part which isn't too hard and get to the final hard part of the level. Luckily, this can be made really easy with a click pattern. Wait a tiny bit after entering the UFO portal before clicking 2 times at a decently fast speed. From here on out, you can just stay in the middle with your UFO and avoid all obstacles. Now beat the easiest part of the level, which is basically free, and good job, you beat Geometry Dash's hardest main level, Deadlocked. On to the final one. Fingerdash, the final main level, introduces 3 new things. A black orb that almost immediately gets you down to the ground, dash orb, and a new spider game mode. The gameplay starts off pretty chill, and at 5% we can see our first black orb appear. The easiest way to pass this orb is to start holding until you're right before this black orb. Then release and click again as fast as you can to hit the black orb that will drop you to the ground and continue the level. The dash orb appears at 10%, which you have to hold, it doesn't matter when. The rest of the gameplay until 40% is pretty standard stuff. Just keep in mind to not immediately hit the second black orb in the game at 34%. This will put you inside a laser, so click when your icon is inside the orb instead of your icon hitting it before being in the orb. Now we enter the spider game mode, which immediately teleports you upwards when clicking. To beat the first spider part, click when your icon reaches these triangles that indicate when you have to click. Beware to not click the black orb in the game for too long, cause this might happen. The ship part and the robot part that come after it shouldn't be too bad once practicing it for a long amount of time with auto checkpoints off. Just do not hold the dash orbs in the robot part for a long amount of time, otherwise you'll find yourself crashing into this spike wall. In the wave part that comes after it, try to stay as much in the middle of the obstacles as possible and only click when necessary. Don't click twice in a row somewhere, for example. Be ready for the next part, since it happens really quickly. And when you are in the wave, do the same as the previous time you entered the wave. In the UFO part after these modes, don't click too quickly and you should be able to beat it without practice. The final part of the level is a very easy cube section that you definitely won't die on at all. Good job, you beat the level. I hope you learned something from this video on how to beat every single main level in the game, and if you want to learn more about the game, be sure to check out some of my other videos and subscribe, since I talk about a lot more things in this game that are way more interesting. Goodbye, and I hope you enjoyed.